Good evening, thank you for your patience. We've got our stream back up and running again, and welcome to the Hearthstone Hour. My name's Hammy, I'm here on behalf of Felcraft.org, and the Hearthstone Hour is our little series where we continue taking a nightly look into Hearthstone, mainly from a new player perspective, but as we go along we'll increase the amount of information, the amount of strategy, the amount of things that we build in, partially as we get used to the game, but also as everyone else's skill builds up with us, and as we move towards open beta when a bunch of people are going to come into the game as well. Tonight we've got in store Afresh Arena, so we'll jump into the arena, have a look at some basics in terms of what kind of things the arena will throw at you, a little bit about how to draft a deck, some really solid fundamentals in terms of deck building, strategy, and some really, the key basics that mean that at least you can throw together something that should be reasonably competitive or thereabouts. There is an element of luck in the arena, but we'll discuss that as we go along. And after that, we'll try a couple of arena games, and then we'll jump back into Priest Ladder with a sort of reasonably basic Priest deck. I'm working my way up the ladder at the moment, so we'll jump in, have a look at the Priest, which is a fairly competitive archetype and deck at the moment, and see how it fares, or my average version of it, in a few different matchups. Okay, so let's jump straight into the arena. So if you've never seen Hearthstone before, or you're just getting into it or just getting used to it, then the arena is effectively a draft mode. So in card games, in trading card games, collectible card games, you have drafts. And in a draft, generally what will happen in a real world situation is a bunch of people will sit around a table with booster packs, and they'll open the packs, and then depending on the rule of the draft, they'll pick a card and pass it on, pick a card and pass it on. So there's always a random element to sort of drafting modes in card games, and the arena is Hearthstone and Blizzard's version of that. There's a bit of a random luck element. Now, because this is based on the Warcraft universe, and because this is Hearthstone, you get to pick one of your starting hero class types, but again there's a random element to that, so you can only choose one of 3 class types that Blizzard will throw at you to start with. Hopefully it's something that you like, but you need to be prepared when you jump into the arena to have at least a bit of an understanding of every single different class type. The arena costs 150 gold. What you really want to be doing is doing your daily quests if you do not want to be spending real money. As you can see, I'm kind of hoping that I get a major paladin or a priest, and anything else I am not too experienced, in fact not experienced at playing whatsoever, so fingers crossed. Down at the bottom here, just in the quest pane, complete your daily quests when you get into the beta, when it goes open, whether that's in the Blizzard month of December or January, as they announced at BlizzCon last week, or differently, but well worth completing your daily quests. Gets your monies to get you into the arena nice and quick. So, firstly in the arena, you pick one of your 3 classes that you're assigned. You then get the chance to pick 30 cards, and you do that one at a time, and each time you get to select a card, you can choose from one of 3 cards that's chosen for that particular deck. So you'll get a mix of cards that are specific to that deck only, druid only cards, warrior only cards. There'll be a lot of neutral cards as well, so all of the neutral minions are generally available. And then to top that off, they occasionally throw in the odd rare, epic, things like that, which are quite cool as well. So you should have a good chance to have a little bit of a look at that as well. Right, without further ado, let's jump in. So if you want to, you can tell where I'm from, 149. I'm not spending real money, so let's go for my 150 gold. It says a purchase complete, but that's only because, beg pardon me, I'm buying in. So, I can take a pick of a paladin, a warrior, or a mage. So if you've seen any of our other videos, I've never played as a warrior. I'm quite happy with a mage. Spellcasty, zappy kind of decks, lots of fireballs, lots of frost novas, lots of control, so a mage is a pretty solid deck type. If you've seen Paladin recently, then you would have also seen that at BlizzCon Artosis rocked a Paladin deck, really aggressive, lots and lots of attacking, buffing cards, and really came through, so that was quite strong as well. I've been trying to learn to play Paladin recently. I played a fair bit as a mage, and when you start Hearthstone, you play as a mage to start with in the tutorials, so I'm probably going to go for a mage or a paladin. Welcome to whoever's just joined the stream, really good to see it. If you are in the Twitch chat, I'm going to ask for some feedback as to what you want to see. Otherwise, I'm just going to jump right in and get going. Okay, I cannot see you in the Twitch chat. Welcome. Welcome to say hi. To go with the theme of what I've been playing recently, I'm going to play for fun. I'm going to go for a Paladin deck.
I will fight with honor.
So here's where your arena begins. Now, as you can see, I've got 0 out of 30 cards. You get this handy little mana curve in the middle, so that's just giving you an idea of, do I have a reasonable distribution of cards over a reasonable distribution of mana levels. So for example, if I had a deck that was nothing in this side and loads in terms of 4, 5, 6, 7 mana, chances are I can't play anything on turn 1, I can't play anything on turn 2, I can't play anything on turn 3. And if I had no cards on this side and all cards on this side, chances are probably 4 turns in I wouldn't have played any cards on the deck and I'd be fairly dead. So you don't have to pay 100% attention. Most people are not going to have a nice straight line across the middle here where they've got exactly the same of every single mana card, but it's reasonable to see if you're lacking in a particular turn or a particular area, you can sort of try and balance it out. And you also get this mana curve tool or small sort of indicator when you're building your own constructed decks as well. So even when there's not that random element, it's still a good thing to pay attention to. That is me, Uther of the Paladinness, and now I need to start drafting. So in terms of when you pull a draft, there's always some randomness. It's just the nature of the format. So you could get amazing cards, you could get terrible cards. You can, in this format, take more than two of a particular card. So obviously in constructed Hearthstone decks, you can only have 2 max of a card. Here, you can have as many as you like if they turn up in your draft. So that does give the potential for some fairly imbalanced decks, imbalanced formats, and all that kind of thing. In terms of a Paladin deck, what do I know about Paladins? I played a little bit of it. You can have some fairly cool combos with minions with Divine Shield. You've got a lot of good buffing cards and abilities and other things like that. So there's lots of different things you can do with the Paladin deck. For me to start with, I'm just going to jump right in and see what I can pull out. But to start with, I've got some very generic minions. So occasionally you see Paladin decks like Shaman decks and also Warrior decks swarming Murlocs. So there we've got a Cold Light Seer. I could choose to pick him, and then I could go for a lot of different Murlocs and have a sort of swarmy deck. The aim of which would be to play lots of Murlocs, get them all buffing each other, powering stuff up, and really getting going. Gadget Xanox, whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. He's okay as a 5 mana minion. The spell casting is good if you've got something that's quite spell intensive. I'm not too sure about him at this stage. Mind Control Tech, pretty squishy, but his purpose, if you look at his battle cries in the late game, if your opponent has 4 or more minions, take control of one at random. So the goal with him is to drop him late game, naturally when someone's got a lot of minions out, and then he can come out and you can pick something big. If you hear a Mac turning on, there we go, all done. Lovely. Another computer turning on in the background there. So to start with, I'm not entirely sure what theme I'm going to go with. This hasn't really given me anything Paladin-wise to start with. The Cold Light Seer would probably be a pick if I was going to focus on Murlocs. That can work in a swarm, can work with a Paladin, but it's generally more suited to something like Hunter, Shaman, something that gives a lot more buffs, something that takes those very, very cheap early game minions and brings them out pretty quick. I just don't know what I'm going to go for to start. I'd commit if I was going for this Murloc card. I think for the time being, the Mind Control Tech it's a very situational card, but I don't feel like committing to Murlocs, so I'm going to take Mind Control for the time being. Okay, now you can see that we've got a generic minion there in terms of Mogshu and Warden, the Silverhand Knight as well coming in. A lot of Paladin decks will summon Squires, they'll give people the ability to put Divine Shields on and similar such things. And you've got Light's Justice, which to be honest is a first turn, as you can see, 1 mana, 1 attack, 4 durability. It's a pretty cheap weapon to swing away with your hero at some stuff in the early game. So for the time being, Silverhand Knight feels like a fairly solid late game card. It's always good to pick out some stuff with Taunt as well to protect yourself. I'm going to hang on and see if I can get some slightly more chunky Taunt cards later in the game. Stuff that summons more minions for free is always good. What do we have now? Acolyte of Pain, again a pretty solid sort of general minion. to kill him, they've got to do damage, and when they do damage, then you get to draw cards. So if you don't pick any cards that let you have draw power, then having a minion that lets you do it isn't too bad either. The Abusive Sergeant is quite nice, giving a friendly minion to attack for 1 turn only. So he's a sort of a 1-drop, and then making sure that you can bust something up to do some more damage. I'm going to go with the Acolyte for the draw. What do we have now? Okay. Shattered Sun Cleric, a solid card for just buffing up your minions. Now remember that your Paladin ability lets you summon a 1/1 minion for 2 mana, so anything that buffs your low minions and makes them better is good. Scarlet Crusader is just a really strong general card. The Divine Shield means you get 1 trade. The first time that the minion takes damage with a Divine Shield, it ignores it, and then it can be killed afterwards, so it effectively gives you 2 shots to get something down. And then Consecration deals 2 damage to all enemies. It's a table clearer. At this point in time, I feel as though I might get another minion. I'm going to go with a Consecrate. This is pretty much a non-decision. The Tauren Warrior is solid. Ogre Magi is also pretty solid, 4/4/4 all around. But True Silver Champion, 2 heal, 4 weapon, really good Paladin cards. Just an automatic buy. Redemption. A good secret, so if you've not played a deck with secrets in, only a few decks have secrets, and it's a card that you play face down. Your opponent can't see it, but it triggers upon a certain activity. So in this case, if one of your minions dies, it's returned to life with 1 health. Now, obviously, you have no choice, so it's whatever minion is killed first by your opponent is then restored with 1 health. So if you played Redemption in the late game, for example, you could have things coming out. You could bring back one of your very powerful minions to life with 1 health, but if you played Redemption in the early game, it might be saving something that's not quite so good, shall we say. Boulderfist Ogre, nothing really to say about that. A pretty sort of solid, tanky late game minion. And the Frost Elemental, the battle cry of freezing a character. Freeze means that that character or that minion cannot attack next go, which, if you need to slow someone down, if you need to prevent some damage, solid, going to go for that. This is going to be a very tough choose. The Argent Protector, as you can see, giving a friendly minion Divine Shield when it comes into play. Really strong ability. You could give that to an incredibly powerful, good attacking minion, and it will swing twice. Blessing of Kings, again, a staple of constructed Paladin decks, just a 4/4 buff. You're making any minion very powerful and painful. And then Handed Protection as well. Cheap, but just Divine Shielding a minion. It's between Argent Protector and Blessing of Kings, and although Divine Shield is useful, just buffing a minion for that amount is even more so. So I'm going to grab the Blessing. At 7 cards in, I've got 2 minions, 4 minions. I've got a weapon and a couple of spells. So as you draft along, it's always a good idea just to keep an eye on your balance of minions to your balance of spells and weapons. You generally, and I'll go as a big generalisation, want to try and be dropping minions or having some option every single go. Now that doesn't always have to be a minion, but you're either going to want to be getting your minions down on the board if your deck is more early game based, or you're going to want to be, as a very general rule of thumb, containing your opponent's minions if you're a bit more late game based. If you get into a situation where you're not able to do anything, you've got no minions and your opponent's got a full deck of minions on the board, then you're in trouble. Or if you've been zapped away and you're not able to do anything later game and you're not pulling the things you need to finish off the game, then you're also in trouble. So it's just having that delicate balance, and in draft, in the arena, it's quite a bit harder, but always worth keeping a tab as you go along. As a general rule of thumb, am I able to do something every single go? Have I got a minion? Have I got a spell that's going to be helping me, whatever the general theme of my deck is? General deck theme wise, I think that I'm going to be trying to control the board, have good trades and use Divine Shield to do so, and then late game bring out some minions to finish people off. Back into the draft. Argent Squire is a pretty solid 1/1/1. It's got Divine Shield, but you do have a lot of first turn cards that have got 2 attack or have slightly more than 1 health, so even though it would not take any damage first go, I'm not sure how much it's going to help with trading, so I'm going to leave that alone. Adventure Co Mercenary, very powerful at 7/6. It's got the reduced mana cost, but then it makes everything else cost 3 mana more. So painful, good if you want something turn 5 to come out and start swinging very hard, but then it slows you down for the later game with that mana cost. The River Crocolisk, 3/2s in terms of 3 attack and 2 health, are a little bit favoured instead of 2/3s because just of the trading, and a lot of 3 attack and 2 health cards also cost 2 mana. It's not bad. I've got some reasonably tanky late game options so far. I'm lacking stuff in the early draw. I don't really want to go with an Argent Squire, so more out of necessity than probably out of any choice, I'm going to grab that Crocolisk. Okay, to the next. Spellbreaker. You see Spellbreaker come up in a fair few constructed decks. It was quite visible at BlizzCon, and silencing a minion as a battle cry, removing all card text and enchantments. When you think about that, that can do a lot of stuff. If a card's got a really powerful ability, that's removed. If it's got an every turn ability, that's removed. If it's a tank and it's got taunt, then that's also removed. So Spellbreaker is just a really generally useful card. Dealing 3 damage to the enemy hero with Nightblade is useful, it's not bad, and the Divine Shield is also not bad, but just for utility I'm going to pick Spellbreaker. We're getting on to the later cards now. Doomsayer. At the start of your turn, destroy all minions. Well, it's a board clearer. You can see with that 7 health, you drop it for 2 mana, you hope it lives, and then if your opponent's got a nasty deck, if you've got a nasty deck, it's just a hard reset. Feels like a card of desperation with my relatively small amount of experience so far. I've not seen a situation where it could be useful, but I've not explored half the decks yet. So for draft purposes, just because I don't know too much about it, I'm going to leave it alone. Doesn't mean it's not a good card. Avenging Wrath, very solid. 8 damage randomly split among enemy characters. Seen in some constructed Pally decks. Can zap minions out the way, can do some damage. It's got the random element. It's not awful. It's got a good use if later in the game you haven't done... you've got the minions cleared and you've got your opponent's board cleared, you can really jump in and use that quite solidly. And then the Sea Giant's an interesting one for draft as well. It's seen some use in constructed play, but simply put, if there's a lot of minions down on the board, then you could be playing this for 4 mana, 3 mana. If you really drop it in the late game, then it's a really mana effective, and as you can see with a powerful minion. I'm going to pass on Avenging Wrath for now because I feel as though I just want something to come in the late game, so Sea Giant gets the nod. Wolf Rider. We're now 10 out of 30 in. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 minions, a weapon and 2 spells. Okay, so the minions are feeling reasonably solid. If we have a look at our mana curve, we're quite weighed into the middle. We've got a lot of 4s coming out. Probably stack up the late game a bit, have a look at the early game as well, and curve things out a little bit. But if our goal was to trade well till mid game and then hit with late game, then we need some more heavy hitting minions or spells at the end. Wolf Rider, charge, meaning it attacks the first turn that you drop it into play. A 3/1, so that's a good trading card. Pardon the really terrible and accidental pun. In terms of trading things on and off of the board, it could work really well. Silvermoon Guardian. Divine Shield goes well with the theme of Paladin deck. 3/3, if that's buffed up, it could be quite good, and for 4 mana it's not quite so bad, so that's a solid option. The rarer shiny Guardian of Kings, the heal is good. 7 mana for 5 attack and 6 health is not a great late game swinger. You're dropping this card if you're needing health in the late game. Now ideally, if you've been clearing the deck as you go along, you shouldn't have taken too much damage. So for that reason, it's not that it's necessarily bad, but I don't think it fits with my theme. Do I want to pull a Silvermoon Guardian when I'm stacking up with 4 cards in the middle? I'm going to grab a trade card with the Wolf Rider. Holy Light does what it says on the tin, like in World of Warcraft. A cheap and effective heal. Venture Mercenary again rears its head, and then the Stormwind Champion, which buffs everything else down on the board. So I'm going to go with the Stormwind Champion. Next up, we've got a lack of tanks in here so far. Frostwolf Grunt is an early game tank. You can pull a bit away with Taunt and 2/2, so it might be worth considering. We've only got a 2/3 down there at the moment. Enrage is an ability on a card for the Armani Berserker. If the card takes damage, then the Enrage effect comes into play. So if he takes 1 damage, he suddenly becomes 5-2. But you can heal and remove some of these effects. So if he got healed, then he would no longer have that extra 3. The Mad Bomber, 3 damage randomly split between all other characters when you drop him in. He's a 2/3/2. The Battle Cry is, as you can see, a little bit unreliable. For sheer fun, let's get him in. Gnamish Inventor. See them come up in draft. It's for the Battle Cry more than anything else. A 2/4 is not going to be trading much for 4 mana in that stage of the game. A Dragonling mechanic you can also see in draft a bit, just because they get the Dragonling into play and it's sort of an extra free minion pool. And the Blessing of Might, 3 attack for 1 mana. I really need to get some more first 10 stuff in, so I'm going to go for a Blessing. And this is not an easy decision. I've got 3 pretty good cards here. So Repentance, another secret. Again, triggered by your opponent making a move. If I would play Repentance in the late game and he drops, say, I don't know, a Sea Giant for 8/8, if you reduce his health to 1, then I can use anything and trade with that Sea Giant. So dropping Repentance in late game will really sting some of your opponent's big minions in the tail if the game gets to that late game stage. Fairy Dragon, the popularity of this is in the ability on card text. It can't be targeted by spells or hero powers, so a minion has to trade with it. So there's no zapping with mage abilities, there's no zapping with any priest abilities, any class that uses a spell card to try and get something off the board. Fairy Dragon is not going to be targetable by that. So as a result, they actually have to force a trade with it. Sounds minor, but at 2 mana and 3/2 it can trade. You can leave it on the board and trade as well. My eyes keep being drawn to this True Silver Champion, even though I have a lot of 4s in the mid-table. Taking weapons and swinging with them for this amount of damage does mean that you're, of course, taking damage back if you're attacking minions. If you're attacking the champion, you're not, of course, unless they've got secrets or something applied. So if you're taking a weapon in this kind of draft, okay, it does a 2 heal, but maybe I should take some more heal cards if I'm honestly thinking about swinging with weapons. The best draft in the world this won't be. It's my first Paladin draft, but we'll work it out as we go along. I'm feeling at the moment between a Repentance or between another True Silver. I'm going to grab a True Silver. Redemption. When one of your minion dies, we've taken a look at that already. Just because you don't have so much control over that unless you drop it in the late game. I'm leaving Redemption alone. The Ironbeak Cowl, similar to the Spellbreaker, the ability to silence a minion upon dropping it onto the table is really, really solid. So a good option. 2/1, you can do a bit of trading. It will get zapped off by some player spells at some stages. And the Strangleform Tiger for 5 mana is just a really strong card, and stealth in general, particularly in draft, is pretty chunky. Drop the card can't be attacked or targeted until it decides to attack, so you can put it down there and leave it there. I'm not huge in the 2 mana sort of area of the game right now. I could take something a little bit later as well. I think that if I take one more big minion at 15:30, I'm going to be okay. This kind of stuff should be coming out later, and I can always chalk up some more, so I'll take the Tiger. Elven Archer. Really, if you're taking a look at the mana curve halfway through, I'm really lacking sort of 0, 1 and 2 mana cards. The early game I'm not sort of getting myself set up, and the original idea of my deck was to be clearing the table and trading off good cards, making sure that I could keep the opponent's minions down until I brought out my heavy hitters in the late game. Noble Sacrifice. When an enemy attacks, summon a 2/1 defender as the new target. Cheap, very solid, just a good way late game of sponging up some damage for a turn. Raging Worgen. In Rage you can attack twice and you get 4/2, so a good option. And then the Elven Archer, do 1 damage when you drop into play. Also those still 1/1 and everything in the middle. I've actually got 3 minions at the 3-drop level. He is a solid minion. I'm going to drop an Elven Archer just to make sure I've got something coming in early. Priestess of Elune, 4 health. It's one of those late game, okay, quite expensive cards, but has the Battle Cry ability. If I'm swinging away with my True Silver Champion, I might have some damage late game, so I may pick some heal cards. Hammer of Wrath, 3 damage, is expensive for 4 mana, but the drawing of a card is the extra bit. But what Hammer of Wrath would let me do is potentially pick off a minion for a card. I do have a lot of 4s. For that reason, I'll take Hammer of Wrath, but I feel that I really need to stop drafting 4s now, particularly with only 12 cards left to go. Right, minion time. Argent Protector comes up again. I'm thinking the Divine Shield is going to be good. So the Harvest Golem you see come up in draft quite a bit as well. And again, the Death Rattle of summoning a 2/1 Golem card means that you can do a 2/3. If you get killed, another minion comes back into play. Always good. And Nightblade we've already seen. For the Divine Shield, Argent Protector gets the nod. Mana Wraith, all minions cost 1 more. That will stop people bringing minions out against me. It may help me trade, but it also hinders me too. The Alarmo bot. At the start of your turn, swap this minion with a random one in your hand. So depends how many minions you've got in your hand. Depends what they are. Risky, to say the least. I could get a worse minion. I could get an amazing minion. Very random. Fun but very random. So I'm going to leave that for the time being. The Azure Drake. Spell damage. I don't have many spell damage cards. A couple. The Battle Cry of drawing a card. I'm going to go with the Drake. Silverback Patriarch. I don't actually have many tanks at this moment in time, so I should probably grab a few things with Taunt. If you want to play like Trump and try and play with no taunt or no tanking cards in your deck, that is brave. It can work, but I'm not that skilled at this point in time, so could be a good option. Amani Berserker we've already taken a look at, and the Dread Corsair. It costs 1 less per attack of your weapon, so here's an interesting option. He does have taunt, and you can see that if I have a weapon down and my mana costs 4, I get a free Dread Corsair. He is another 4 card though. Against my better judgment. Bloodsail Corsair, remove 1 durability. Just don't know if I'm going to be playing weapons decks, but I do need stuff early game. A Knife Juggler, so we've actually got 2 really good early game cards here, particularly for draft. The Knife Juggler you see in a lot of drafts just because of his ability. He's a 2/3/2, so 3 attack, 2 health. Good mana efficiency, and then after you summon a minion, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So if you get him down behind a tank, he's swinging and swinging and swinging, and extra damage on the field for effectively free. The Young Priestess can get shot pretty quick, but at the end of your turn, give another random friendly minion +1 health, and she will keep buffing and buffing and buffing until someone kills her. So if I can drop that behind a tank, it will buff me up. Out of the 2, I'm thinking that the Knife Juggler for the time being is the more solid bet, just because he can trade. Okay. If I'd taken that Murloc first turn, I wouldn't have seen a Murloc, I think, until now, so I think that's justified my decision. But you can see the Murloc Tide Hunter, in line with the other Murloc kind of cards, really centres around being played early game, swarming, getting a lot of Murloc cards out early doors, and a lot of the Murloc cards actually summon other Murloc cards as well, so that's that 1/1 Murloc Scout summon there. South Sea Deckhand, charge while you have a weapon equipped. I'm not equipping a weapon until turn 4 at the least. For 2/1 he could trade in an early game, he's got that purpose, and then the Fairy Dragons come up again. Definitely. Booty Bay Bodyguard, slightly more expensive. As you see some of these taunt cards around the 4 and 5 mana range. Slightly more expensive mana wise, just because he's got that higher attack, but I don't have tanks, so he could be useful. We've already talked about Redemption, and I've got a couple of late game minions. The Core Hound, the low health, he swings really, really well, but the low health feels as though I've played a lot of games with the Core Hound and he's been traded away. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Booty Bay Bodyguard. I would like some big tanks. Okay, 24 out of 30, so I've got 6 cards to go. Let's just do a little stock count. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so 18 minions, and then the 6 remnants are only 6 spell cards. So I've probably gone the other way actually too much now, having had not enough minions. So I won't say too many, but it would be good to try and draft a few more spell cards, just to balance things out, or certainly things that will bring out my other cards as well. Taking a look down here, we've got Young Priestess again. We've got Violet Teacher, so I can be summoning for 2 mana 1/1 minions whenever I cast a spell, summon a 1/1 apprentice, but I don't have many spells, so for that reason, and the fact that she's a 4 mana cost, Violet Teacher can stay in the deck. The Argent Commander, Charge and Divine Shield for 4/3. He is expensive, but that double ability means he can come in and do some damage, trade, pick something off. A Young Priestess, if I really want to drop something first turn, can be buffing or coming into play later game. It's between these two, and I'm going to go with the Argent Commander. Okie dokie, 5 cards to go. Choose a minion. Whenever it attacks, draw a card. I could do some draw power. The Argent Squire could come in as an early game card, but I think the Blessing of Wisdom gets the nod. And the thing is with Blessing of Wisdom, you may forget this, but you can actually play it on your opponent's minions as well. So if one of your opponents is attacking, you can bless that card and it will give you cards. Naturally, you'd probably rather have it on your own so you can control it, but always worth remembering. Grimscale Oracle goes in line with other Murlocs, buffs all of your other Murlocs. Raging Worgen, Darren Mage. We've seen the Worgen before, and the Mage is a spell buff card. As strange as it sounds, I could go with it. I'm going to go with the Worgen. I need the trading cards. Novice Engineer, see it come out quite a bit in drafts. That battle cry of drawing a card is lovely. A Kobold Geomancer fits in a spell deck. 2/2. Okay, doesn't really fit with what I've drafted so far. Light's Justice, we saw earlier, a cheap weapon to start swinging with. So what it comes down to here is, do I want something else I can play turn 1, or do I want that draw a card ability? I want to draw cards. Corehound pops up again, Raging Worgen again, eye for an eye. When your hero takes damage, deal that much damage to the enemy hero. So that's trading like for like. It is something I can pay for a mana, but if I'm taking big damage, then with this kind of card, if people are attacking your hero and you're taking big damage to make it the reflect worthwhile, you're probably in quite a bit of trouble anyway. It feels like a bit of a desperate pick. I'm quite stacked out in the middle with 3-drop minions as well, so just because it's 1 mana rather than anything else. Let's have a quick look. I have only the 1 secret, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm looking at Secret Keeper. Whenever a secret is played, gain 1/1. Given the 1 secret I think I have in my deck, it's not the strongest combo. Those 2 cards go well together, but at the same time, they're not really going to... It's quite a low draw chance of 2 in 30 that I get both of those and they actually do their job. The Young Priestess again, staring us in the face, and then the Imp Master. The Imp Master is actually quite an interesting one, particularly if you've got a deck like a Shaman deck or something that buffs all of your minions. At the end of your turn, every turn, the Imp Master does damage to themselves and then it summons an Imp. So you can stack up 1/1 minions quite quickly. Good at getting stuff on the board. You can, of course, buff those minions with the other minions that you drop. Whether it helps or not in terms of trades all depends on what your opponent's dropped. A tough decision. I think I'm going to go with a Priestess. And a bit of a thrill, that's our draft deck. So, if we just have a quick look at what we've got a couple of early game buffs and a secret. We've got a few early game minions. In the Argent Protector, Fairy Dragon, a Knife Juggler, we've got a little bit of utility. We can do some damage, we can get some trades going. The Argent Protector with Divine Shield for another minion means we can get some trades going. In terms of our early game cards, we've only got the 2 minions, but one does a damage, and one, whether we drop early or late game, will be buffing minions as they go. Young Priestess is a target because of the 1 health. Novice Engineer, we've got as almost a random draft. Mad Bomber was totally for fun, nothing else. But the Novice Engineer lets us draw a card. River Crocolisk at the time seemed like a good idea, now it seems like a bit of a waste of space. But for 2/3, it should help us trade something. Acolyte of Pain, more card draw. Mind Control Tech, it is more of a late game drop, but we can drop it to try and trade if we want to. There's a lot of cards at 2, 3, 4 mana that have got 3 health. Raging Worgen, a bit of extra attack power if we need it. An insta trade potentially with a Wolf Rider. Swing away with 2 True Silver Champions. A Blessing at Kings, Consecration, and Hammer of Wrath. We've got that 4 band of Paladin spells. Sadly only the 1 Blessing of Kings, but that will give us a buff. Consecration will hopefully let us clear a bit of the field. Hammer of Wrath should let us pick off a minion and draw a card. The Dread Corsair is to go, it's a combo together with True Silver Champion. So True Silver Champion costs 4 mana. If we have a True Silver Champion active and play the Dread Corsair, we can drop it for free. So free minion with Taunt, 3/3, lovely. Spellbreaker for the Silence and Minion utility, which is handy. Azure Drake was really for the draw a card. Biddy Bay, tank, enough said. Silverhand Knight pulls another Squire at 2/2, that could be quite useful. Stranglethorn Tiger for the stealth. Argent Commander for the charge and Divine Shield for a trade. And by this stage in the game, hopefully we should be able to pull some of our big elementals, or big late game minions, with the Sea Giant rounding off the deck. Cool. So it's taken us a good 20 minutes to 25 minutes to go through that, so let's jump into a couple of games and see how this deck actually plays.